Heading at the inlet, a text I have been sending to my mom since before the iPhone was created. I've been lucky enough to experience growing up on the water and fishing since I was 2 years old. Over the past 18 years, I've witnessed intense decline in my local waters. My dad also grew up in South Florida, but with a very different ocean. He tells me plenty of stories about the beautiful colors and variety of life he used to witness on his local reefs. Unfortunately, these colors simply do not exist anymore, and I do not have the ability of going out my local inlet and witnessing the same beauty as 40 years ago.
I have been blessed with a similar experience as Lance, being a third-generation local South Florida fisherman and diver. In my 18 years of existence, 16 of those I have spent fishing. I have traveled throughout the Bahamas, the Caribbean, in search of game fish with my father and grandfather. My father grew up fishing and diving with his father on our local reefs. They used to be covered in fish that we don't even get the opportunity to see anymore, such as the yearly migration of bluefish that he used to catch on fly. I have never had this opportunity because they don't migrate through here anymore. That is just one species migration that he has witnessed a decline of, along with many more, that have made me wish I grew up in a different time.
The days of an ocean filled with flourishing coral reefs is hard to come by nowadays. It used to be where you could fish in any spot and catch your limit every day. However, our ocean has since transformed, and if you do not have the proper spots, you most likely will not catch anywhere near your limit. That's if you catch anything at all. There are a plethora of issues that have led to the decline of the ocean's richness, but the leading problem has been pollution. I know, pollution is a broad term, and you've heard it to be the cause of everything bad. But this time, it really is causing everything bad. Due to our ocean's enormous surface area, it acts as a huge water waste basket, and it collects a large majority of pollutants which hover in the troposphere, or the air above the water. This causes issues such as ocean acidification and rising ocean temperatures. Just these two issues alone are capable of murdering a tremendous amounts of reef colonies. It was around summertime last year. I was viewing some articles by New York Times, NPR, CNN, overall some of the biggest names in media, and they all were about arguably the most well-known reef in the world, the Great Barrier Reef. Unfortunately, they were not to comment on its beautiful colors or vast variety of fish, but how it has fallen victim to warming ocean temperatures. This reef, one I have dreamt of visiting as I've heard stories of its beauty, now struggles to survive. It's home to over 400 different species of corals and countless species of fish. But now, large portions of this habitat are slowly dying off due to only 1 degree change in temperature. This slight change in temperature leads to severe illness within the individual polyps and eventually kills the entire organism.
This small but severe increase in our ocean's temperature all leads back to us on land. It's caused by global warming, all due to heat-trapping carbon dioxide that we emit in absurd amounts on a daily basis, collect in our atmosphere, and leads to higher global temperatures, therefore raising our ocean's temperatures. However, due to its large size, our ocean has warmed much slower than land temperatures. But the organisms within our ocean are greatly affected by even the slightest increase in temperature. As Lance and I traveled through the state of Florida and the Bahamas to fish and dive, we are immersed in a diversity of wildlife that we are so blessed to have on this planet. But we also see a lot of negative things happening to our reefs and our fish populations. We see entire reefs stripped of life. Places that used to be covered in living coral and beautiful fish when I first started diving are now at a great risk. When we dive in the Bahamas, it seems untouched compared to what we have here in Florida, but it's not. Even the Bahamas have experienced a great loss in marine life. When we dive on some of our spots in the Bahamas, we see something similar to the lobster traps we have here at home. The seafloor is riddled with fish traps. These people are fishing for a living, but are doing so with very little boundaries or law enforcement to oversee them. Thus, very little sustainability. But even in this paradise, they are feeling the impacts of pollution as well.
One of our favorite islands to visit is Bimini. With such easy access, the only thing separating us from beautiful blue water and white sand beaches is an hour boat ride. When in Bimini, we spend most of our time diving the famous reefs and wrecks around the island, where we bear witness to all sorts of pollution. All things from debris, fishing line, to plastic bottles and grocery bags. It's crazy to think that a small plastic bag you see flying out your car door, not only here in South Florida, but even in Ohio could, and chances are, will end up in our ocean. These type of plastic pollutants accumulate, and they are accumulating at a very rapid rate. It was found that nearly 110,000 metric tons of plastic waste ended up in our ocean last year. This plastic just doesn't sit there and take up space, but it releases harmful chemicals such as biosynthol into the water until it is eaten by one of the thousands of different organisms in our ocean. Once an organism ingests this plastic, it can cause choking, starvation, illness, and in the end, it results in a painful death of an innocent animal. As fishermen, it is difficult for us to realize such minute changes in our ocean's temperature. But as we often find ourselves on the water, we bear witness to plenty forms of pollution affecting our local waters. It is not uncommon for us to see collections of debris and oil on the water surface as we make our way out our local inlet. These collections of oil, yacht wax, gear fluid all gather together and create a sheen on the surface of the water before they break down, sink, and cover our ocean floor. These pollutants are carelessly released from inexperienced boaters who do not recognize their harmful effects on our ocean.
As Lance just stated, sometimes as we leave the dock or are coming back in, we see a sheen of oil or gas on the surface of the water. These huge oil trails are destroying the sea life in which they encompass. In the waters far from where we fish, there is the infamous BP oil spill. The consequences of this were seen in the waters that we fish, even though that was thousands of miles away from us. Take the fishing community of the Florida Keys, for example. Many families depend on commercial fishing and charters to provide for them. The guides that rely on the oceans had to convince clients that it was still okay to come down and had to even lower their prices after the BP oil spill. It's tough to put all the blame on pollution for the current state of our oceans. Overfishing is another serious threat to our big blue. Right now, 77% of red snapper commercial quota in the Gulf of Mexico is held by just 55 people. Any fish market you go into will most likely have red snapper. You never really think what's behind that pretty fish sitting on the ice. It's just dinner to you. However, the amount of people behind getting that fish to you is an industry that supports thousands of families. In South Florida, a very popular fish is yellowtail snapper. These yellowtail are caught locally or in the Florida Keys by local commercial fishermen. Just this one species of snapper is stimulating our local economy. These fishermen and their families depend on the oceans that are being destroyed at an alarming rate. So by anybody that makes the conscious decision to harm the environment is not only harming the marine life in it, but it is also harming the families of the fishermen and anyone that consumes these fish. This past weekend, Lance, my father, and our good friend Tony were lucky enough to seize our opportunity with the weather and spend a few days in paradise in Bimini. It's wintertime, and according to any offshore fisherman in the Bahamas, it's wahoo time. My dad tells me stories of going over and fishing for a couple hours and filling the box. Unfortunately, today we have to work a whole lot harder for a whole lot less fish. We spent about 9 hours of high-speed wahoo trolling in the 2 days that we were there. And it's sad to say, but we only caught one wahoo. In between all the wahoo fishing, we prefer to fish for yellowtail and dive. We decided to go to one of my dad's most proven yellowtail spots, and it has been his preferred spot for the last 30 years or so. There were no yellowtail on this spot. Usually, this can be attributed to the wrong current or wrong conditions, but the conditions were perfect. We were so astonished, we thought it might have been our fault. We might have anchored on the wrong spot. But to our surprise, we were right on the money, maybe 80 feet off the spot, and not a yellowtail in sight. We were forced to change gears the next day and head to other spots. These spots did produce the fish that we were looking for the previous day. My dad has fished this same spot for the last 30 years. It has produced schools of fish that light up the crystal clear water. We experienced the changes in the fishery firsthand, and this is why Lance and I feel it is so important for us to share this message.
My dad, Ryan's dad, every marine biologist, and every fisherman, all of whom's passion is the sea, have either seen effects or have been affected by the harm we have caused our very fragile ocean. In the end, it is all of our ocean, and it is our responsibility to conserve, protect, and work to reverse the harmful effects we have caused. Thank you.